The Last Stars of Andromache. Chapter 1, The Weight of Worlds. Commander Zara Voss stood at the observation deck of the ISV Dominion's edge, watching the slow rotation of Kepler 442b's crimson surface through the reinforced transparisteel. The planet below had once housed 47 million souls across 12 city-states. Now it was a graveyard of glass and metal, its atmosphere still crackling with residual energy from the orbital bombardment that had ended the Outer Rim rebellion 3 months ago. "Ma'am," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Lieutenant Torres, his young face pale beneath his regulation Imperial Navy cap. "Admiral Corvin requests your presence in the war room." Zara nodded, taking one last look at the dead world below. The Terran hegemony's reach extended across 14 galaxies now, encompassing over 300,000 inhabited systems. Kepler 442b was just one more world that had learned the price of defiance. She wondered how many more would follow before the Empire's expansion finally slowed. The corridors of the Dominion's edge hummed with the constant thrum of the ship's quantum drives. Crew members in their pristine white uniforms moved with practiced efficiency, each aware that they served aboard one of the most powerful vessels in the Imperial fleet. The ship stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with plasma cannons and singularity torpedoes capable of cracking planets. Admiral Corvin waited in the war room, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic star charts. At 68, he was old for a frontline commander, but his strategic brilliance had secured him command of the 7th Fleet despite whispers about his age in the upper echelons of Imperial command. "Ah, Zara," he said without looking up from the displays. "Come, look at this." The hologram showed a 3-dimensional map of the Andromache galaxy, their current theater of operations. Red indicators marked Imperial-controlled systems, while yellow showed contested territories and angry orange denoted active rebellion zones. What caught Zara's attention was a cluster of orange markers near the galaxy's outer spiral arm, a region that should have been pacified months ago. "The Zenith Syndicate," Corvin said, his finger tracing the orange markers. "Intelligence suggests they've been coordinating the remaining resistance cells. Our sources indicate they're planning something significant." Zara studied the tactical display. The Zenith Syndicate had emerged from the ashes of the failed Outer Rim Rebellion, comprised mainly of former military officers and civilian leaders who had escaped the initial purges. Unlike previous resistance movements, they seemed to understand that direct confrontation with Imperial forces was suicide. "What kind of something?" she asked. "We're not certain. But they've been acquiring rare earth elements, specifically tritanium and quantum-stabilized plutonium. The kind of materials you'd need for..." Corvin paused, meeting her eyes. "For building jump gate disruptors." The implications hit Zara immediately. The Empire's control relied heavily on its vast network of quantum jump gates that allowed near-instantaneous travel between star systems. If the Syndicate could disrupt that network, they could effectively isolate entire sectors from Imperial reinforcement. "How long until they're operational?" she asked. "Unknown. But intelligence believes we have a narrow window. I'm sending you to Nexus Station, it's the primary hub for this sector's gate network. If they strike anywhere, it'll be there." Nexus Station orbited the binary star system of Kepler 1649, a massive construct of metal and crystal that served as both a strategic waypoint and a symbol of Imperial technological supremacy. The station housed nearly 2 million civilians and military personnel, making it one of the most populous installations in the Outer Territories. "Take the Phoenix and her escort group," Corvin continued. "Captain Rodriguez is already preparing for departure. Your mission is to reinforce Nexus Station and neutralize any Syndicate assets in the area." As Zara prepared to leave, Corvin placed a hand on her shoulder. "Zara, there's something else. The Emperor's Council has been restless lately. There's talk that our expansion has overextended our resources. Some are calling for a consolidation period. And others? Others believe we should accelerate our campaigns. Finish the pacification of Andromache and move on to the next galaxy." His grip tightened slightly. "Either way, our performance here will determine the fleet's future." Don't let politics back on Terra dictate what happens to good soldiers out here. Chapter 2, Sparks in the Void. Captain Elena Rodriguez had been born on a transport ship somewhere between Proxima Centauri and Wolf 359. She'd spent her entire 34 years in space, and the Phoenix had been her command for the last 3. The ship was smaller than the massive dreadnoughts that formed the backbone of the Imperial fleet, but what it lacked in size it made up for in speed and maneuverability. As the Phoenix dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 1649 system, Elena couldn't help but admire the view. The binary stars cast alternating waves of golden and white light across Nexus Station's angular superstructure. The station's 6 primary arms stretched outward like the spokes of a wheel, each terminus housing one of the massive quantum gates that connected this sector to the rest of the Empire. "Ma'am, we're receiving a priority transmission from Station Command," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Kim. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Station Commander Marcus Webb. Elena had served with Webb during the Vega campaign 5 years earlier. He'd been a good officer then, though the stress lines around his eyes suggested that command of Nexus Station had taken its toll. "Elena, thank God you're here," Webb said without preamble. "We've had 3 separate incidents in the past week. Sabotage attempts on the Gate Network's power grid, a security breach in Section 7, and yesterday someone tried to plant an explosive device near the primary quantum matrix. Any leads on who's responsible?" "Nothing concrete. Our security teams have arrested 17 suspects, but they're all small-time, dock workers, maintenance staff, that sort. Either they're being recruited locally, or..." Webb paused. "Or someone's already inside the station." Elena felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with the realization that a mission was about to become significantly more complicated. "We'll dock within the hour. I'm bringing Commander Voss aboard to coordinate the investigation." After ending the transmission, Elena turned to her tactical officer. "Mr. Park, I want full sensor sweeps of all approaching vessels. If someone so much as sneezes without proper authorization, I want to know about it." Nexus Station's docking bays were a marvel of engineering, capable of accommodating everything from single-person shuttles to massive cargo haulers. As the Phoenix settled into Docking Bay 7, Elena could see the controlled chaos of a major Imperial installation, uniformed personnel rushing between assignments, cargo loaders moving supplies, and the ever-present security patrols maintaining order. Commander Voss was waiting as Elena disembarked. The 2 women had worked together before, and Elena had always appreciated Zara's analytical approach to problems. While Elena relied on instinct and experience, Zara brought a methodical intelligence that complemented her own style perfectly. "Status report," Zara said as they walked through the station's main concourse. 6 attempted sabotage incidents over the past month, escalating in sophistication. Webb's security teams are good, but they're dealing with an enemy that seems to know the station's layout better than they should. They passed through several security checkpoints, each requiring biometric scans and authorization codes. The station's interior was a maze of corridors, lift shafts, and service passages that honeycombed through its massive structure. Elena could see how easy it would be for someone with the right knowledge to move around undetected. Station Commander Webb met them in the main operations center, a circular chamber at the station's heart where dozens of technicians monitored the quantum gate network. Massive displays showed real-time traffic through each gate, merchant vessels, military transports, and civilian passenger ships moving between the hundreds of systems in this sector. "The attacks have been getting more sophisticated," Webb explained, leading them to a tactical display. "The first few were crude, cutting power cables, that sort of thing. But the last attempt was different. Someone tried to introduce a virus into the gate control systems." Zara studied the technical readouts. "What kind of virus?" "According to our analysis, it was designed to cause a cascade failure in the quantum synchronization matrix. If it had succeeded..." Webb shook his head. "It would have taken down the entire gate network for this sector. Thousands of ships would have been stranded in hyperspace. The magnitude of such an attack was staggering." Ships caught in hyperspace when the gates went down would be lost forever, unable to navigate back to normal space without the quantum beacons that guided them. It would be genocide on an unprecedented scale. I need to see the security footage from each incident, Zara said. And I want access to all personnel records for the past 6 months. As Webb provided the requested data, Elena found herself studying the tactical displays. Something about the pattern of attacks bothered her, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what. The attempts seemed too obvious, too likely to be detected by station security. "Commander," she said to Zara, "what if these aren't the real attacks?" Zara looked up from the personnel files she'd been reviewing. "Meaning? What if all these incidents are just distractions? Something to keep security focused on obvious threats while the real operation proceeds undetected?" The possibility sent a chill through the operations center. If Elena was right, then everything they'd been responding to was merely a smokescreen for something far more dangerous. Chapter 3: The Enemy Within. Dr. Sarachan had been working as a quantum physicist on Nexus Station for 8 months, and in that time she'd grown to appreciate the subtle beauty of the technology that made interstellar civilization possible. The quantum gates were marvels of engineering that folded spacetime itself, creating stable wormholes between distant star systems. What few people knew was that Sarah had also spent the last 2 years working for the Zenith Syndicate. She stood in Laboratory 7, ostensibly running routine diagnostics on the gate network's quantum matrices, but actually implementing the final phase of Operation Dark Star. The Imperial security teams had done exactly what the Syndicate had predicted, focused entirely on the obvious sabotage attempts while ignoring the much more subtle changes being made to the gate systems themselves. Sarah's modifications weren't designed to destroy the gates or cause cascade failures. Instead, they would allow the Syndicate to take control of the network at a predetermined time, redirecting Imperial ships to coordinates of the rebels' choosing. An entire fleet could be captured simply by altering their jump destinations. "Dr. Chen," came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Commander Voss and Captain Rodriguez approaching with 2 security officers. Her heart rate spiked, but she forced herself to remain calm. She'd prepared for this possibility. "Commander, Captain," she said with a polite smile. "How can I help you?" "We're conducting interviews with all personnel who have access to the gate control systems," Voss said. "Just routine security checks following the recent incidents." "Of course. I'm happy to cooperate." Rodriguez studied the equipment around them. "What exactly are you working on, Doctor?" "Quantum matrix diagnostics," Sarah replied smoothly. "The gates require constant monitoring to ensure synchronization remains stable. Even minor fluctuations can cause navigation errors." It was true enough, though she omitted the fact that she'd been introducing very specific fluctuations that would activate when the Syndicate transmitted the proper control codes. "Have you noticed anything unusual in the past few weeks?" Voss asked. "Any anomalies in the system performance?" "Nothing significant. There have been some minor resonance variations, but that's normal for a network this size." Sarah gestured to the display showing real-time gate status. "Actually, the system has been remarkably stable lately." Voss nodded, but Sarah could see the analytical mind working behind her eyes. The commander was known throughout the fleet for her ability to spot patterns that others missed. "Dr. Chen, your personnel file indicates you transferred here from the Titan Research Facility. That's quite a career change." "I wanted field experience. Theoretical research is fascinating, but there's nothing like working with operational systems to really understand the technology." "And your family?" "The file shows you have relatives in the outer territories." Sarah felt ice in her veins. This was the question she'd hoped wouldn't come up. "My brother lives on Kepler 442b. Or, lived. I haven't heard from him since the bombardment." The truth was that her brother Marcus had been one of the rebellion's coordinators. He died in the orbital bombardment 3 months ago, along with his wife and 2 children. That personal loss had driven Sarah to join the Syndicate's cause, though she couldn't reveal that to Imperial officers. "I'm sorry for your loss," Voss said, and Sarah was surprised to hear genuine sympathy in her voice. War is never easy on families. Thank you, Commander. After the officers left, Sarah continued her work with hands that trembled slightly. The final modifications would be complete within hours, and then Operation Dark Star would be ready to implement. The Syndicate had been patient, planning this operation for over a year, and soon their patience would be rewarded. Chapter 4, Patterns in Chaos. Commander Zara Voss had always found that the key to solving complex problems was stepping back and looking for patterns that weren't immediately obvious. She stood in her temporary quarters aboard Nexus Station, surrounded by data displays showing everything from personnel records to system diagnostic reports. The picture that was emerging troubled her deeply. Every one of the sabotage attempts had been carried out by personnel who had family members on worlds that had been subjected to Imperial pacification operations. That could be coincidence. The Empire's expansion had touched millions of families, but combined with the increasing sophistication of the attempts, it suggested a coordinated recruitment effort. Someone's been targeting people with personal grievances against the Empire, she said to Captain Rodriguez, who sat across from her reviewing security footage. Makes sense from a recruitment standpoint, Elena replied. People with nothing left to lose make the most dedicated soldiers. But look at this, Zara said, highlighting several entries in the personnel database. Dr. Chen lost family on Kepler 442b. Maintenance Supervisor Torres had relatives on Proxima 7. Engineer Kim's home world was New Edinburgh. All planets that experienced significant civilian casualties during Imperial operations. Elena studied the pattern. You think they're all compromised? I think they're all potential recruits. But here's what bothers me, the obvious sabotage attempts have all been carried out by low-level personnel. Dock workers, maintenance staff, junior technicians. But if I wanted to really damage this station, I wouldn't use obvious approaches. Zara called up a schematic of the station's quantum gate network. Look at this. 6 primary gates, each with its own quantum matrix. The security systems are designed to prevent obvious attacks, explosives, power cuts, that sort of thing. But what if someone with high-level access was making subtle modifications to the control systems themselves? The possibility was terrifying in its implications. The quantum gates were so complex that only a handful of people on the station truly understood their operation. If one of those people had been compromised. We need to review the access logs for all high-clearance personnel, Zara said. And I want a complete audit of any modifications made to the gate control systems in the past 6 months. As they worked through the data, a pattern began to emerge. Dr. Sarachin had been working late shifts in Laboratory 7 on a regular basis, often during periods when automated monitoring systems were undergoing routine maintenance. The timing could be coincidental, but combined with her personal background, it raised significant red flags. Elena, I need you to quietly position security teams around Laboratory 7, Zara said. But don't move in yet. If Dr. Chen is working for the Syndicate, she might lead us to other operatives. Captain Rodriguez nodded and began issuing discreet orders to her security teams. Within minutes, highly trained Imperial Marines were taking positions throughout the station's laboratory section, invisible to casual observation but ready to act if necessary. Zara returned to her analysis of the gate control systems. The quantum matrices that governed each gate's operation were incredibly complex, requiring constant fine-tuning to maintain stable wormholes across interstellar distances. A skilled physicist could make modifications that would be nearly impossible to detect through normal diagnostic procedures. "Ma'am," came a voice from her communication panel. It was Lieutenant Kim from the Phoenix. "We're detecting an encrypted transmission burst from the station to an unknown destination. Can you trace the source?" "Working on it. The signal is heavily encrypted and was transmitted using the station's normal communication array, but we managed to isolate the specific antenna used." Zara felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "Which section of the station?" "Laboratory 7, ma'am." Chapter 5, Dark Star Rising. Dr. Sarachin finished uploading the final control codes to the hidden partition she'd created in the gate control systems. Operation Dark Star was now ready for implementation, all it would take was a single transmission from the Syndicate's command ship to activate the modifications and seize control of the entire sector's jump gate network. She'd just deleted the last traces of her work when her laboratory's security sensors detected movement in the corridors outside. Through the reinforced glass walls, she could see Imperial Marines taking positions throughout the laboratory section. They'd found her. Sarah quickly activated her emergency protocols, sending a coded burst transmission to alert the Syndicate that her cover had been blown. The operation could still proceed, but she wouldn't be able to provide real-time support during its implementation. The laboratory door hissed open as Commander Voss and Captain Rodriguez entered, flanked by armed security personnel. "Dr. Chen," Voss said calmly, "please step away from the control terminals." Sarah raised her hands slowly, her mind racing through possible escape scenarios. The laboratory had multiple exits, but all would be covered by now. Her only hope was that the Syndicate would implement Dark Star before Imperial security could discover and disable her modifications. "I suppose you think you've won," Sarah said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "This isn't about winning," Voss replied. "It's about preventing unnecessary bloodshed. How many Imperial ships were you planning to capture with your gate modifications?" Sarah felt a moment of shock. They'd discovered the true nature of her operation. She'd expected them to assume the modifications were designed for destruction, not capture. "Clever," she admitted. "Most Imperial officers would have assumed we were planning to destroy the gates." "Most Imperial officers haven't spent years studying Syndicate tactics," Voss said. "Your organization learned from the failed rebellion. Direct confrontation is suicide, so you've shifted to more subtle approaches. Capture Imperial vessels, recruit their crews, turn our own strength against us." Rodriguez was examining the laboratory's equipment, her experienced eye noting the sophisticated modifications Sarah had made to the standard diagnostic systems. "How long have you been planning this operation?" "Long enough," Sarah replied. "And it's too late to stop it now. Dark Star is already in motion." As if summoned by her words, the station's alarm systems suddenly activated. Emergency lights began flashing as Station Commander Webb's voice echoed through the corridors, "All hands to battle stations. We have multiple contacts approaching the station at high velocity." Through the laboratory's external viewports, Sarah could see the dark shapes of approaching vessels, their hulls configured to minimize sensor reflection. The Syndicate fleet had arrived. 15 ships, Rodriguez said, studying a tactical display. "Frigate class by their silhouettes. They're not here to negotiate." Voss activated her communicator. "All Imperial vessels, this is Commander Voss. Prepare for immediate departure from dock. We need to intercept those ships before they reach the station." But Sarah smiled, knowing something the Imperial officers didn't. The approaching fleet was just the visible component of the operation. The real threat was already aboard the station, and in less than 10 minutes, Operation Dark Star would give the Syndicate control of the most important strategic asset in the sector. "Commander," Sarah said, "you might want to consider surrender. What's about to happen will change the balance of power in this entire galaxy." Chapter 6, The Gate War. Captain Elena Rodriguez had faced hostile fleets before, but never under circumstances quite like these. As the Phoenix cleared Nexus Station's docking bay, she could see the approaching Syndicate vessels had arranged themselves in a complex formation that spoke of careful planning and professional execution. "Tactical assessment," she ordered. 15 vessels, all frigate class. They're maintaining sensor silence, but their approach vectors suggest they're planning to surround the station," reported Lieutenant Park. "Estimated time to weapons range, 8 minutes. Elena studied the tactical display, noting how the enemy formation was designed to prevent Imperial ships from escaping through the jump gates. It was a sound strategy. If you controlled the gates, you controlled movement throughout the sector. "Ma'am, I'm detecting power fluctuations in the gate network," warned the ship's chief engineer over the communication system. "Someone's accessing the quantum matrices." That confirmed Elena's worst fears. The Syndicate wasn't just planning a conventional attack, they were implementing the modifications that Dr. Chen had made to the gate control systems. Communication from Commander Voss, reported Lieutenant Kim. She's requesting immediate assistance in Laboratory 7. Elena found herself facing a tactical dilemma. She needed to engage the approaching enemy fleet, but if Voss needed help dealing with saboteurs still aboard the station, splitting her attention could be disastrous. Lieutenant Torres, take a security team to assist Commander Voss. Mr. Park, prepare all weapon systems. We're going to have to fight our way out of this one. Aboard Nexus Station, Zara Voss was discovering that Dr. Chen's capture had been only the beginning of their problems. The physicist's emergency transmission had activated sleeper agents throughout the station, maintenance workers, security personnel, even some junior officers who had been recruited by the syndicate over the past months. Ma'am, we have reports of fighting in Sections 3, 7, and 12, reported Station Commander Webb. Someone's coordinating a simultaneous uprising throughout the station. Zara realized they were facing a classic insurgency scenario, external pressure from the approaching fleet combined with internal sabotage designed to prevent effective resistance. The syndicate had learned well from their previous failures. Webb, lock down all access to the gate control systems. I don't care if you have to cut power to half the station, those gates cannot fall under enemy control. Understood. But Commander, if we lose gate control, we can't call for reinforcements. The Phoenix and her escorts are the only Imperial vessels in the system. The mathematics of the situation were stark. 3 Imperial ships against 15 enemy vessels, with the added complication of an active sabotage operation aboard the most important strategic installation in the sector. Zara had faced difficult odds before, but never anything quite this challenging. Dr. Chen, she said, turning to the captured physicist who was being held under guard in the laboratory. Your people are about to die in large numbers. Is your political agenda worth that kind of bloodshed? Sarah met her gaze steadily. Imperial pacification campaigns have killed millions of civilians. At least our people chose to fight. Those civilians died because their leaders chose rebellion over negotiation. There's always another way. Tell that to the children who died in the Kepler 442b bombardment, Sarah replied coldly. Tell that to my nephew who was 8 years old when your ships turned his school into glass. Zara felt the weight of those words. She'd been present during the Kepler 442b operation, had watched from orbit as the planet's surface was scoured clean of life. Military necessity, Admiral Corvin had called it. The price of maintaining order across an empire that spanned galaxies. But looking at Dr. Chen's face, seeing the pain and rage that drove her actions, Zara wondered if that price was becoming too high to pay. Ma'am, interrupted Lieutenant Torres, we're detecting massive power surges in the gate network. Whatever modifications were made to the system, they're activating now. Through the laboratory's viewports, they could see the quantum gates beginning to fluctuate, their normally stable energy patterns becoming erratic. If the Syndicate gained control of the network, they could redirect any Imperial reinforcements to coordinates of their choosing, likely into the heart of a star or the event horizon of a black hole. How long until the modifications are fully active? Zara asked. Sarah smiled. You have about 4 minutes before Dark Star gives us complete control of this sector's gate network. I'd suggest you use that time to consider surrender. Chapter 7, Quantum Gambit. The battle for Nexus Station began with a massive electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disabled the station's primary sensors. Captain Rodriguez had seen the tactic before. The Syndicate was using the confusion to mask their final approach and prevent accurate targeting of their vessels. All ships, this is Phoenix Actual. Spread formation and prepare for close quarters engagement, Elena ordered. They want to get in close where our numerical disadvantage is minimized. The Imperial escort ships, 2 destroyers and a heavy cruiser, moved to comply with her orders. Elena had worked with these crews before and trusted their professionalism, but she knew they were facing experienced opponents who had planned this operation carefully. Ma'am, I'm reading weapons log from multiple contacts, reported Lieutenant Park. They're preparing to fire. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire as targets become available. The Phoenix rolled to starboard as plasma bolts streaked past its hull, the ship's automated defensive systems engaging incoming projectiles with point defense lasers. Elena felt the familiar rush of combat, the heightened awareness that came with having her ship and crew in mortal danger. Direct hit on the Relentless, Park reported. She's vending atmosphere but maintaining formation. Elena could see the heavy cruiser through her tactical display, plasma scoring its hull where Syndicate weapons had found their mark. But the ship's thick armor was holding, and her captain was already adjusting position to present a stronger defensive profile. "Ma'am, the enemy formation is breaking up," observed Lieutenant Kim. 5 ships moving to attack the station directly, 10 maintaining engagement with our forces. That confirmed Elena's tactical assessment. The Syndicate was planning to capture the station intact, which meant they needed to neutralize its defenses without destroying the facility itself. That gave the Imperial forces some advantages, since they weren't constrained by the need to preserve the station's infrastructure. Target the ships approaching the station. We can't let them establish boarding operations. Aboard Nexus Station, Commander Voss was fighting a different kind of battle. The Syndicate sleeper agents had revealed themselves throughout the massive facility, engaging station security and running firefights through the maze of corridors and service passages. "Security teams to Section 7, Webb ordered. We have reports of explosives being planted near the primary quantum matrix." Zara realized that even with Dr. Chen in custody, the operation was proceeding according to plan. The physicist had been just one component of a much larger strategy, and her capture hadn't significantly disrupted the Syndicate's timeline. "Dr. Chen," she said, "your people are going to destroy this station to deny it to Imperial forces. Are you prepared to die for your cause?" Sarah looked genuinely surprised. "Destroy the station? Commander, you still don't understand the scope of this operation. We're not here to destroy anything, we're here to capture the most important strategic asset in the sector." That stopped Zara cold. If the Syndicate gained control of Nexus Station and its gate network, they could effectively cut the Imperial 7th Fleet off from reinforcement and resupply. Worse, they could use the network to launch surprise attacks anywhere in the galaxy. "The modifications to the gate systems," Zara said. "They're not designed for destruction, they're designed for capture." "Very good, Commander. Darkstar will give us complete control over quantum gate operations for this entire sector. Every Imperial vessel that tries to use the network will end up wherever we choose to send them." The implications were staggering. The Empire's control over its vast territories depended on rapid movement of military forces through the gate network. If that network could be turned against them, the strategic balance would shift dramatically in favor of the rebellion. "How long?" Zara asked. Sarah checked the chronometer on her wrist. 2 minutes until full implementation. "And Commander, even if you manage to regain control of the station, the modifications are buried so deeply in the quantum matrices that it would take weeks to remove them. We've effectively turned your own technology against you." Zara felt the weight of impending defeat. The Syndicate had planned this operation with remarkable foresight, creating multiple layers of protection for their primary objective. Even if the Imperial forces managed to repel the attack, the gate network would remain compromised. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Torres said urgently, "we're detecting power surges in all 6 gate systems. The modifications are activating now." Through the laboratory's viewports, they could see the quantum gates beginning to change. Their normally blue-white energy emissions were shifting to deep red, and the stable wormholes they maintained were fluctuating wildly. "It's beginning," Sarah said with satisfaction. "Darkstar is now online."